Well, it's something that we are talking about a lot. The political stories seem so historic. They're unprecedented, but we're not in a political vacuum. There's a growing discussion as to whether history is repeating itself and if President Trump's actions in Georgia following the 2020 election compare to Vice President Al Gore's in the year 2000. And those who were there are offering a new perspective. Famed attorney Alan Dershowitz, in a new op-ed, writes, I was one of the lawyers involved in objections to Florida's presidential vote count in 2000 during the course of our challenges. Many tactics similar to those employed in 2020 were attempted, end quote. And Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law School emeritus professor, is joining us right now, the author of the new book, Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Always a spirited conversation when you're here, Alan. How do you believe that these two election challenges are similar?
Well, they're never the same. Elections are never the same. But some of the tactics that are being now criminalized were attempted, obviously, in previous elections, like Bush versus Gore. There were attempts to try to get additional different slates of electors. There was lobbying of state officials. Now, of course, the difference is that Al Gore was a mensch. He was a decent guy. And at the end, when the Supreme Court erroneously ruled that he had lost the election, he immediately acknowledged that. And when they tried to bring it up in the House and Senate, he was the presiding officer because he was the president of the Senate, the head of the Senate, as vice president. He denied it. But there were too many similarities, and matters of degree should not be criminalized. You have to show that there were specific crimes that haven't been in any way committed in the past during elections. And I think this indictment fails to do that. It fails to meet what I call the Richard Nixon standard. In the Richard Nixon case, his criminality was so clear that Republicans agreed, independents agreed, almost nobody claimed that what he did was not criminal. Here, there are very substantial people, academics, scholars, ordinary people, politicians from both parties who say, wait a minute, this sounds much more like a political campaign than it does a RICO violation. RICO, after all, was designed for mobsters, organized crime, the Godfather. It was never designed to criminalize tough tactics, and these were tough tactics. I disagree with them. I think what Trump did was dead wrong, but the line between dead wrong and criminal is a very important one that should always be preserved.
Then why are we not hearing more of those particular perspectives? We're instead hearing from so many people who believe that the criminality in this case seems to be crystal clear, especially for the DA in Georgia.
Well, it's not crystal clear, and don't believe anything the DA in Georgia says. She started this whole prosecution by looking you and me in the eye and lying through her teeth. She said, I'm going to try to bring this case to trial in 6 months. She knew she couldn't bring this case to trial in 6 months. 90 pages, 19 defendants, thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of pages of discovery, multiple motions that will be made, severance motions, transfer motions. She is lying. And if she wants to make lying a crime, then she ought to not lie herself. That's a heck of a way to start a prosecution about somebody else lying.
You have a very strong opinion about that, and I hope that people are listening.
I have a very strong opinion about her. I don't like liars, and I don't like prosecutors who cut sharp corners. As Justice Gorsuch said, we expect our government officials to turn square corners. She started this case in a terrible, terrible way. And the other people who are saying that there's a difference between Gore are Democrat Gore supporters. Professor Lawrence Tribe, who wrote some of the memoranda justifying the tactics that we were using in Bush versus Gore, says, no, this is different. It may be different, but it's not different to the degree that one is commendable and the other is criminal. The line between criminal and bad behavior. Look, I disagree with almost everything Donald Trump did. I disagree with him claiming a victory in the election. I disagree with the speech of January 6th. I voted against him twice. I plan to vote him against him a third time. But
so you'll vote for Biden?
Between being bad and being criminal. What'd you say?
Will you vote for Biden?
Yes, I'll vote for Biden. I won't vote for him with great enthusiasm, but I'll vote for him. I didn't vote for very many people from the time I voted for John Kennedy in 1960 with great enthusiasm. I thought Kennedy had some real problems, and many of them manifested themselves during his election. But vote based on party platforms. I vote based on issues like
so many Americans.
Issues,
yeah,
gay
values.
rights, gun control, and that's why I generally vote Democrat. I could vote Republican if the Republican candidate was substantially better than the Democrat candidate.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.